Anti-intellectualism is based. The thing that is driving me to write this script is my observation that a lot of people who talk about important and societally relevant issues have no charisma and no idea how to communicate those issues to anyone outside themselves and who already thinks like them. I've talked a lot about the values of comedians as, people who are control the means of cultural production. And they do more than anyone to shift public opinion, far more so than those people who just engage in Socratic discussion like a bunch of nerds. No one embodies what I'm talking about more than someone like Sam Harris.
It's important to do something other than masturbate.
Yes.
Especially after his podcast after George Floyd. He said something to the effect of, the only tool we have for changing people's minds is conversation.
I mean, conversation is the only tool we have for making progress. I firmly believe that.
That is a laughable idea. Think of all the beliefs that people have. They aren't formed on the basis of what the fuck? They aren't formed on the basis of being logically convinced through conversation. They hold those opinions because everyone around them holds those opinions. Imitation is the primary way in which we develop our worldviews. This isn't a social observation I'm making. It's a neuroscientific, neurophysiological fact. Despite what many nerds watching this video would like you to believe, most of the knowledge you have is a result of other people telling you stuff rather than you arriving to a conclusion based on some logical or empirical analysis. Think about something like Black Lives Matter. Do you remember when everyone posted the black square on their Instagram? Do you think the people who posted that did so because they arrived at some logically derived socio-cultural, sociological, empirical analysis of the relationship between black people and capitalism? No! They posted their black squares because everyone else was doing it. And so suddenly, the new knowledge that everyone had was solely a function of everyone else doing it. And the problem is, if you were one of those socially inept nerds who pointed out, well, statistically, black people being shot by the police are technically one of the most, insignificant issues facing the black community, you would have been, even though you'd be right, you'd be called a racist and an idiot by people who think that statistics is a type of STD. In our modern era, with social media acting as the technological superhighway for the transmission of memetic information and meme complexes, people's worldviews are particularly susceptible to the content they see constantly on their phone. They just imitate that shit. Even if you're in possession of the logical and literal truth, it means nothing if you don't have the charisma or worldly experience to communicate it to people. Because people don't base their worldviews on logic and literality, or whatever the literalism. Even though I've never seen anything with my own eyes that would even remotely approximate evidence that the world is round, I'm 100% more confident that the earth is round than I am that my car is in the parking garage that I just parked it in a few hours ago. Because it could have gotten stolen, something could have changed, but in no way, shape, or form could the world not be round. Because all the people smarter than me told me that, and they believe it. And flat earthers will say, well, isn't that proof that you're in denial? No, this is proof that flat earthers have no idea how people the basic mechanisms of how people form their worldviews. I have absolutely no idea how my phone works, and I have no idea how the food that I eat arrived at my table or my mouth. I know how it got from my table to my mouth, but I don't know how it got to my table. The fact that my phone works and the fact that I have food on my table is a form of proof of the veracity of the beliefs of the people who produced my phone and produced the food that I eat. And I'm in no position to question them and their ideas. So whatever they tell me is true, I'm going to believe is true, because unless I have reason to doubt them, unless I have reason to believe that they're purposely being dishonest or deceitful. And just as it's absurd to call into question the knowledge a computer engineer has when he made my phone, it's also equally absurd to call into question the entire structure of Western civilization, despite not knowing a goddamn thing about it. And so many people, so many online intellectuals, so many personas are built off of questioning the fundamental nature of society. It's like, maybe that's a dumbass move. So for example, I remember seeing a video from Little Joel, or Big Joel, or whoever, bitching about ShoeOnHead being anti-intellectual.
ShoeOnHead, an online influencer, said this: "Fucking animals is bad. Globe emoji, sock emoji, rose emoji. Source?"
And I just laugh to myself because I'm just like, this guy thinks that his video essays and his, I'm going to rationally articulate these different ideas.
Who says here is a very bad answer, and that's for two fairly obvious reasons. First, the word natural has no coherent definition.
To be honest, right now, I can just feel it. I'm making fun of him because I don't like him and I disagree with him. So I'm naturally mocking his way of communicating. That's not very honest of me. The point is that him criticizing ShoeOnHead for being anti-intellectual is just out of touch, because it's like, hey, you're a goof. It was also about like ShoeOnHead complaining about people doing weird shit with animals, and it was like, well, that's not very intellectual to talk about that. It's like, well, you know, at a certain point, I would rather be not intellectual and normal than I would just purely intellectual, because pure intellectualism, much like the Tower of Babel, leads into the absolute disintegration of all categories and the underlying fabric of reality, which is based on non-rational principles. My point is, does a truly intelligent person look at other people and think, oh, look at me, I know all these things, and therefore I am a member of a gifted minority and am better than these people? Or does a truly intelligent person look at people, see how they actually act, and adapt and take that into account and change themselves accordingly? The answer is the second, in case you didn't realize that. Think about Dave Chappelle or Bo Burnham. They don't have mountains of theory. They're not nerds, right? Well, they're kind of nerds, right? You gotta have a nice blend of both theory and praxis if you want to approach it from this dumbass Marxist lens. But Bo Burnham and Dave Chappelle have the social capital that they do. They have the influence on people because they have an understanding of human nature and the realities of people, and not this intellectual mumbo-jumbo nonsense, right?
I go on Twitter sometimes, and you and the little MAGA freaks, you guys all yell at each other and stuff for 4 hours a night. Shouldn't you be doing drugs and getting laid? Isn't that more fun than screaming about Kamala Harris? Isn't this a weird way to spend your young adulthood?
It is, yeah.
The human truths are so much deeper than just politics. So whenever I see somebody, like, it's all the same type of freaks, and it's just young guys in suits with these vacant looks in their eyes, and they got a photo with Trump or a photo with Biden, and you're all just, and I guess it's necessary because that's the next generation of fucking people that are gonna come and ruin the country.
This is the hero archetype in action. Just as each human being is armed with the physiological infrastructure and psychological capacity for anger, we are in the same way wired with the ability to engage in, or at minimum, identify the kind of behavior that 6 billion years of evolution selected as the most life-affirming, functional, insert whatever value-based adjective you want to put here, way of living. And we speak about this broadly as the hero archetype, the heroic behavior that people engage in. And the thing about heroic behavior, it produces this thing called charisma, which is very vague and you can't define, but we all know it when we see it, right? Look at me. Look how much I'm breaking the mold with all this fancy. The thing about charisma is that because it was selected over billions of years, long before we developed a, fully articulated rational structure of reality and rational way of interpreting the world, it's predicated on the existence, Predicated on existence in the real world as opposed to competence in manipulating abstract ideas. Here's the line. I gotta read this verbatim from Ian McGilchrist. Schizophrenics, like philosophers, have a problem with the sense of self which ordinary individuals involved with living lack. In other words, all these fucking nerds who just think solely about abstract ideas and never apply them, never put them into practice, never make them pragmatic, whose philosophy is not based on pragmatism. They're all just dweebs. And, you're good at convincing people who already agree with you, but who cares? Because it's called preaching to the choir. And really, look, the point of all this is to remind people that your competence as a person is not derived from your intelligence or your ability to manipulate abstract concepts better than someone else, but from your ability, to make a difference in the lives of people around you. Who cares what you have to say about some abstract political theory if you lack the ability to connect it with real life? Now, at this point in writing out the script for this video, and at this point in me reading out the script, I realize that this is just one long injunction directed at myself. And the reason that I'm making a video out of it is to reaffirm it for myself publicly, and hopefully to speak to the part of you that shares my flaws. What is the Alan Watts line? The person who only ever thinks has nothing to think about but their own thoughts. Anti-intellectualism obviously has its share of problems, right? There's a lot of anti-intellectuals. Everyone who's a libertarian, for example, right? See? Jokes. But the anti-intellectual who's oriented towards good and draws upon the reality of day-to-day life rather than abstract theory is the one who outshines the nerd shit intellectual, right? So anti-intellectualism is definitely based, okay, in my opinion. And we should all learn to embrace it. So, really, if you're going to take away anything from this video, it's go volunteer for like a couple hours a month or something, right? Go do something. People say touch grass. That's just kind of a vague injunction. Go do something that has immediate productivity. And there's plenty of places that can do that. Look up on volunteermatch.com or something in your city. All right? Godspeed, everyone.